179명이 숨진 무안공항 제주항공 여객기 참사가 발생한 지 100일이 지났습니다. 이 사고조사위원회 조사와 경찰 수사가 동시에 진행 중이지만 속도는 너무나 더딥니다. 미국 교통안전위원회 NTSB도 블랙박스 분석과 엔진 조사 등에 참여하고 있는데 SBS 취재진이 수십 년간 항공사고를 조사한 전직 NTSB 조사관들과 미 항공청 관계자들에게 이 무안공항 참사를 어떻게 보고 있는지 물었습니다.
35년 넘게 미국 항공청 FAA와 교통안전위원회 NTSB에서 항공사고를 조사해온 제프 구제티. 179명이 숨진 핵심 요인은 조류 충돌도 동체 착륙도 아니었고 이 방위각 시설이 콘크리트 둔덕 형태로 활주로 끝을 막고 있었던 탓이었다고 분명하게 지적했습니다. 조류 관리가 제대로 되지 않은 상황에서도 조종사는 동체 착륙까지 완벽하게 해냈다는 겁니다.
Have an emergency occur at 500 feet and then you're able to get the airplane onto the ground, I thought was excellent. Excellent job in conducting a belly landing there. It is just so tragic that concrete barrier was at the end. Because if that wasn't there, no one would have died in that accident, in my opinion. I don't understand why you would want to build a big, giant concrete slab and then put antennas on it. Regardless of whether it's just inside or just outside, there shouldn't be big concrete immovable objects off the end of the runway.
2,500건이 넘는 항공사고를 다뤄온 그레고리 페이스 NTSB 전 조사관도 이 방위각 시설을 문제로 지적했습니다. 특히 과거 캐나다에서도 비슷한 문제로 사고가 발생한 적이 있다고 귀띔했습니다.
One of the first things I noted when I heard about the accident and saw the videos of the accident, my attention was drawn to the fact that where the localizer antenna was mounted was on a dirt berm. I've investigated a Boeing 747 in Halifax, Nova Scotia, that struck a similar type structure. It was almost identical. There was a concrete stanchion to hold the localizer antenna, and then it was covered with dirt. And when the Boeing 747 took off, they took off very late down the runway, and the back end of the aircraft during the climb out struck that localizer berm and literally tore the back end of the airplane off and caused it to crash.
지난 1999년 아메리칸 항공 여객기가 공항 내 구조물과 충돌한 사고도 있었는데 25년여 전인 그때 이미 부러지기 쉬운 구조물 전환이 권고되면서 전 세계 표준이 됐다고 덧붙였습니다.
We have an international standard for frangible mountings. That is, putting antennas or any other equipment that is going to be in close proximity to a runway on both the approach and departure ends of the runway. We put them on frangible posts or structures so that if the aircraft does strike it, they immediately break or bend or fold. That is for crash survivability and at least damage reduction if an aircraft were to strike it. So if we were to take the Jeju accident and take that berm away, the aircraft would have slid across the dirt in that grass area and then encountered the chain link fence or a fence that was bordering the airport. That wouldn't have been as damaging to the aircraft and in fact could have actually helped slow the aircraft down as a barrier versus having a non-moving, non-frangible concrete and earthen structure that when the aircraft hit it, the only thing that was flexible and able to absorb the energy was the aircraft, and we saw the resulting damage. And I was very surprised that that airport still had that kind of structure.
다만 국내에서는 무안공항 제주항공 여객기 참사가 발생했을 때 이 콘크리트 둔덕 방위각 시설에 부러지기 쉬운 구조물 표준에 적용을 받는 활주로 종단 안전구역 안에 있냐 밖에 있냐를 놓고 논란이 벌어진 바 있습니다.
저희 무안 쪽은 그런 어떤 그 범위 밖에 있었기 때문에 규정들이 적용되지 않고 있다.
그런데 두 전문가들은 이런 논쟁을 벌인 자체가 놀랍다는 반응이었습니다.
I know that there's some controversy about this antenna array and concrete being built outside of the runway safety zone for the FAA advisory, but it's not quite in the ICAO international standards. So I think it's something that the investigation should focus on. And I hope that the final report will have a discussion about that.
I would have to question the fact that any kind of structure within the boundary fence of the airport is in the runway safety area. So in this case, because that localizer mounted on that earthen berm and concrete structure sits on the airport property within the airport boundary fence, then it is in the runway safety area. It is not outside the runway safety area. And a good rule of thumb is anything inside the perimeter fence or the boundary fence for the airport is in an area that can be struck by an aircraft either on approach and landing or on takeoff and departure climb out.
또 이번 사고의 법적 책임 여부와 별도로 규정을 따랐다 해도 그 결과가 참사였다면 그 규정은 재검토돼야 한다고 강조했습니다.
And that's the whole purpose of an aircraft accident investigation, is to find out what went wrong and how you can improve it. And if it means changing a regulation, then good, that should be changed.
이런 가운데 조류 충돌에 공항 측이 제대로 대비하지 못해 사고를 더욱 심각하게 만들었다는 지적도 더해졌습니다.
Well, I think that the airport should have had a more robust, substantive wildlife mitigation program. They should have had more people involved in preventing birds from being around the airport during the time of the landing, especially if they knew that this airport was along a migratory pattern and had experienced large flocks of birds before. In all of the accidents that I've been involved with, there was usually some criticism, some focus on why the government didn't ensure some mitigation efforts to scare away the birds or to detect the birds.
그리고 저희가 인터뷰한 전문가들 모두 사고 조사가 끝나기 전이라도 필요한 개선 조치는 바로 실시해야 한다고 강조했습니다.
We need to improve aviation safety now versus 2 years from now.
지난 1월 미국 워싱턴 DC에서 발생한 여객기 헬기 충돌 사고 직후 미 NTSB는 항공청을 향해 한 달 만에 3건의 긴급 안전 공고를 발표하기도 했습니다.
One is for generating reports as if something urgently needs to be fixed, if they're investigating and they see, wow, that's a big problem, we can't wait until our report comes out in almost a year before we make recommendations on that. So we're going to make recommendations on that right now. So they are very, very well known for bringing out early recommendations. And likewise, they bring out what they try to do is to be very transparent in what they're doing. They want to have the confidence of the public that what they're doing is a good, sensible, reasonable, unbiased, impartial investigation. So they like to be as transparent with what they're finding as possible.
이에 비해 우리 항공철도 사고조사위원회가 10년간 보고서를 작성한 항공사고 16건을 분석해보니 국토부를 상대로 안전공고를 한 건 3건에 불과했습니다. 국토부 장관이 항공철도 사고조사위원회를 지휘 감독하고 인사와 예산권까지 행사하다 보니 독립성 문제가 수시로 도마에 오릅니다.
Well, I mean, that is one of the reasons why the NTSB split off outside of the Department of Transportation, because there were accidents in which the NTSB was going to make a recommendation to the FAA, but the FAA said, don't embarrass us, please. We're all part of the same family. We'll try to handle this internally. And they didn't, and other accidents would occur. So you don't want to have that kind of situation. But still, I mean, a truly independent organization should have no fear to issue recommendations to the government that it's working for to improve safety.
정부 산하에 있던 미 NTSB도 이런 문제 때문에 지난 1975년 대통령 직속 기구로 분리됐습니다.
Many times the things that the regulators do or don't do play a role in generating the right circumstances for the accidents. If the regulator did or didn't do something that led to this mishap, that's not likely to be in the regulator's report.
조사기구의 독립성이 보장돼야 제도 개선을 선제적으로 지적하고 이행 상황을 추적할 수 있다는 겁니다. 조사의 투명성을 높이는 조치도 필수적이라고 지적했습니다.
In the United States, the NTSB releases the full written transcript of the cockpit voice recorder. We publish transcripts and interview statements of the people we interview. But the more information that can be released, the better, in my opinion, because that makes for a more transparent, trustworthy investigation.
We have a policy here that we would provide on a regular basis factual information that we know has been verified, and we present that to the public in context so that as the investigation progresses and new information is developed, that we provide that to the public so that they get a better understanding of the work that has been done and what it means along the process and what work is yet to be done.
확인된 정보를 투명하게 공개하고 이 과정에서 다른 전문가들의 도움도 적극 활용해야 한다고 덧붙였습니다.
It is vital to have the airline's pilots and the pilot union from that airline participate in the investigation because they know how to operate their own airplanes and they can bring a wealth of knowledge to the Accident Investigation Board. And if the Accident Investigation Board does not allow pilots or the pilot unions involved in that investigation, that decreases the trust and the credibility of the investigation's final report, in my opinion. In the United States, we allow the airline that had the accident to be involved in the investigation and the pilots union and the mechanics union from that airline. And plus, it provides a different voice that can counter another party like Boeing or like the government. It balances out the investigation with different perspectives.
진실을 제대로 밝혀야 하고 그 진실은 독립적인 시스템 안에서 보장될 수 있다는 것이 이들의 공통된 지적이었습니다.
We don't want their lives to have gone in vain. We need to learn the lessons to improve aviation safety so that the loss of their life has improved aviation safety and not just be forgotten.